So given some of the challenges that you've mentioned around funding, what are some of the options that social impact entrepreneurs have for funding? What are some of your recommendations?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question because funding is really at the crux of social innovation. You know, a lot of times I think we seek the wrong kind of funding for where we are in this cycle. So if you have a solution that is tested, where you know that you're delivering value, you know that it has social impact, you know that it has a path to scale, then you can start seeking larger amounts of funding that help you execute on that plan. But in many cases, we have solutions that there's still a lot of questions out there. It's still, a lot of things that we need to improve about it to be able to meet the needs that exist in the world. And in those cases, I think we need to look at funding that is more flexible, that will support innovation. So there's three things that I would recommend for social entrepreneurs. So one is, if you're still innovating, look for smaller amounts of funding. We always sort of measure ourselves by how much funding we secured, but it's actually the smaller, more flexible funding that you need in the early stages when you're trying to innovate, not a huge amount of money, because you want to experiment, run smaller experiments that help you learn much more quickly. The second thing is, and this is something that is a little bit scary, is to push back on funders. I think a lot of people who are trying to raise money are a little bit cowed by funders because they hold all the power. They hold the purse strings. I've talked to many social entrepreneurs who've been willing to push back on their funders and earned respect as a result. Because if your funder sort of pushes you into a corner that isn't really for the best of your social enterprise or for the best of the kind of solution you're trying to develop, it doesn't do anyone any good. And you know best kind of what's necessary to succeed. And I think it's worthwhile letting the funders know that and telling them what you need in order to do that. The third is to really insist on flexibility. Some of the best social enterprises I know of have really pushed back on the funders and said, hey, we're only going to take your funding if it's unrestricted, so that we have the flexibility to pursue things each step of the way based on what we've learned and what works best, and not get sort of shoved into a narrow corner where things may be suboptimal.